Mr. Ray Deck, welcome to the Pivot series of Building Bellingham.
Yo, how you doing?
You're welcome back virtually.
I know it. This has been fun. It's been fun to watch. You pivot this show to something new.
Yeah, I'm on a beach, but I'm in a fleece. Is that contradictory?
I want to know if it gets sandy. Do you get sand in that fleece?
It's anti-sand. That's what the guy who sold it to me said. He said for all of the fleeces you'll be wearing on beaches, this is the one. Yeah, I think I got on that one. But thank you for joining me, man. Interesting times. Your hair's grown, your beard's grown. Look like a scholar. As long as you look the part, right? Our wives don't question us, right?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Quarantine's a great time to grow your hair out.
yeah. I think so too. I'm working on it, believe it or not. It's all slicked back. It's all in the back in a mullet. You just can't see
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Right. Yeah. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, Ray. So for people that don't know Ray, a lot of people do know Ray, but Ray runs an organization called Skookum Kids, which is the largest foster care program and placement program in Whatcom County. And you're for the world of foster care, you run a program that's very young but very highly productive, right? For the time in business, right?
Yeah, it's this summer we'll celebrate our fifth anniversary. We are, as far as I'm aware, the youngest agency of our type in the state. We have a program most people know us for is Skookum House, which is an emergency shelter, and it is very unique. It's kind of one of a kind, sort of one of a kind effort. We take care of kids new to foster care for about a week while their social worker is locating a home where they'll be well suited for. And in addition to that, we also help families who want to become foster parents to navigate the licensing process.
Very versatile, very important, especially, and we can dive as much or as little into this as you'd like, but especially right now because kids are out of school, and it's a challenging time for everybody. It's all relative, but there's a huge world that maybe not a lot of people have thought about, which is where do kids go that don't have a good household to go home to? Like school is actually a safe haven for them, right?
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, Ray, tell me a little bit more about this whole concept of pivoting. This has forced us to. I mean, if we had this meeting, maybe we would have gone and grabbed a beer or coffee in another time. But right now we're on Zoom, and we're taking this opportunity to talk a little bit more about what we're doing as business owners or organization leaders or leaders in our community to change the way ultimately we do things now. But how are things going to change for you, do you think, long term, given how things are happening right now?
Yeah. So Pivot's a pretty, I think, apropos name for this series because everybody's doing that right now. The world that we all used to live in doesn't exist, and we all live in a new world all of a sudden, and it happened very quickly. Changes like that, cultural changes about how people work and interrelate to one another. Those kinds of shifts tend to happen very slowly. And what's jarring about this one, it was almost overnight that, it went from, we all had a routine, we all had a way of working and being, and then now all of a sudden we have a different way of being. And so everybody's got to figure out how to navigate this new world. And we're all doing it together. So, the way that looks at Skookum is, one, we have to think about what are the things that we do that this is just not a good time for. This is not a good time for fundraising events. This is not a good time for training events. Because some of that stuff you're just flat not allowed to do. And there are other organizations who are attempting to still do a version of that, in a virtual way. And most of that stuff, we've just said, you know what, just not now. Now's not the right time. And the other side of the coin is there are other things that this is a very, very good time for. As an example, we've seen a huge increase in the number of inquiries about foster care. People who, it's been on their someday maybe list for a very long time. is it, someday we'll think about being foster parents. Someday we'll get to it, but the application seems really long, or, they got like errands to run and work to do and kids to take care of. And they just never seem to get to it. Well, now we're all quarantined at home and everybody's getting to their someday maybe list. So we are just like crazy doing, initial interview, walking people through the application, right? Getting people started in the process, because the getting's good. That's what this season is really good for, that kind of work. And it's really not good for, helping people finish the process. The good news is we're not going to live in this brave new world forever, right? Things are going to return to normal. It's just a question of when. And so for us, it's really been a matter of set down the work that is really hard to do and that this is a bad time for, and let's pick up the work that is flowing really naturally right now.
So it's kind of a silver lining, because another piece of your organization that you've grown it to an amazing size in 5 years, which is huge. But at the same time, this is something that a lot of people want to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with big hearts out there that want to do this, but they also have their own life that they're trying to navigate. And anybody that thinks any kid that thinks an adult has their, shit together is mistaken. Everybody's trying to figure their stuff out. Right. And so I think the big piece is that, like, the silver lining that you're finding is it's not fundraising season right now, but it is a really amazing opportunity for people to, you called it our someday list. And I feel like my wife and I are accomplishing our someday lists around the house and with our marriage and all sorts of things. And so that's huge that that's happening with your business and many other people's business. Right. So yeah, tell me how this has impacted you personally.
Yeah, it's a good thing, because, there's going to be, like you mentioned before, there are kids all over our community who are quarantined in unsafe situations. And, we are all, this time is not going to last forever. We're all going to emerge from our caves. And when we do, those kids, who have been quarantined somewhere unsafe, and have had unspeakable things happen to them, they're going to be back around a friend or a coach or a teacher or a pastor or somebody, and they're going to tell a story and a report's going to get made. And we are about to see a tsunami of kids entering foster care for the first time. And, I'm really glad that there's a lot of people getting to their someday maybe list and, getting serious about, okay, now's the time for me to really explore becoming a foster parent, because we're going to need them.
You're saying that the surge on the other side is that because kids are spending more time at home because they have to, right, that is going to push some of these relationships to the point where they need to be in foster care.
Yeah, for a lot of kids, being home with mom and dad and having all of mom and dad's attention that's really exciting. My kids are loving it. They're getting lots of my attention and lots of my wife's attention and playing outside all the time, and that they're loving life. There are plenty of households where that's not the case, where, mental illness and substance abuse and domestic violence kind of combine into a sort of cocktail that creates a very unhealthy environment for kids. And take all of that and say, no one's allowed to leave the house for 2 months?
Right.
And the kind of stress that creates. And, it's very commonly understood that domestic violence tends to spike. Domestic violence and child abuse tend to track together. They're slightly different things, but they do tend to track together. And they spike in events like snowstorms, where everyone's cooped up in the house at home, quarantines. We're going to see an increase in domestic violence and child abuse during quarantine. The thing with child abuse is roughly 70% of the reports of child abuse and neglect are made by teachers. So we're really going to find out about a lot of this when kids go back to school eventually.
So is that a ripple? You're not going to find out about this immediately, but you're saying this may be a ripple of a month or 2 months, even more down the road after kids go back to school.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more for you and your personal life and your family. What has this been like for you? I know there's a lot of silver linings that are in this for many people, and many people are becoming more grounded and more connected with their friends and family and their loved ones, even electronically through, platforms like this. How has this grounded you and your family, and how has this impacted you all?
Yeah, I mean, I've got two toddlers at home, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my wife Keely and I are expecting our third this fall. So
Congratulations. That's
thank
awesome.
you. Yeah, two toddlers and a pregnant wife at home. So they are all really excited that I'm home a little more. I'm not working from home exclusively. Foster care is an essential service, so we're doing most of our work remotely and by Zoom like this. But I do still go into the office a couple days a week, and that's where I am now. So for me, it's probably about half the time I'm working from home. So I'm sort of like out in the yard, work on the garden, play with the boys, run inside to a conference call. And then the other half of the time is business as usual. So, I was in at 7 like usual this morning, and it's going to be a normal, ordinary work day for me. It's just, I'm the only one in the office. So
Tell me a little bit more about how you've adjusted your company. How has your company contracted or expanded, or what's happening with your organization right now?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, foster care is an essential service. So there's certain things we do that are like quick cancels, right? It's just like obvious that we're gonna cancel it. We had a fundraiser charity poker tournament scheduled here right at the beginning of this, stay home order, and that was always going to get canceled. I had to play a game of chicken with some of our vendors to get our deposits back, but I mean, of course that's going to be canceled. There's other things we do that are probably like the very last things to stay open. Emergency response to a crisis in a foster home, and placing kids in homes and things like that, you can't do that remote. So you're going to always do it in person, and it has to always be on. Like that can't go off. There's certain parts of the business that just always continue. We, saw this coming and had a tiered response plan. If this happens, then we'll respond this way. It had 4 tiers, and the stay home order was the 4th and most extreme of the like levels. And so we were all set and ready, and kind of anticipating it. Actually, it was announced on a Monday. We were anticipating it on the Friday before, and we're all like in place and ready for it. The place where it's probably been the most impactful is in our parent-child visitation work. Virtually every kid in foster care has court-ordered visitation with their biological parents. And for really good reasons. It maintained the relationship. It is an important lifeline, both for parents and kids. And we supervise that, make sure that it's safe and healthy. And so we do a lot of that, something like 100 and 180 hours of visitation every week that we supervise. There was some question about stay home. Does that mean visitation happens in person? And I was really proud of our team. We before we got any meaningful clarification from the courts or from the state about how we should act, we went ahead and set up the infrastructure so that we could deliver service remotely, parent-child visitation through Zoom like this. It was like let's get this ready in case we have to use it. Not saying we're gonna, but in case we have to. And so, what happened in all but a very limited number of cases is that, bio parents, foster parents, social workers, everybody on the team just agreed, you know what, for now, this is better. And so we were delivering remote visits for a good solid 2 weeks before the governor ordered a moratorium on all in-person parent-child visitation. And so everybody else in the field was scrambling. We got to figure out how to deliver this service remotely by Zoom. And we were we'd been doing it already for 2.5 weeks and just sailed straight through. So, and that's a testament to the very smart and competent men and women who, are foster parents with Skookum and serve on staff at Skookum who, put that in place really early.
That's amazing. So you saw an indicator, maybe a little bit ahead of what was going to happen, or you put that safety net in place in the event that it did. Mm-hmm. And it's a very simple safety net. It's funny that we think about systems and processes. We think that they're only meant for good times. Yeah. Right? We think that, let's create a better system and process when we have time in the event that this keeps going well, but there's always the event that something doesn't go well. And so, I think that's a pretty amazing bit of advice, kind of indirect advice that we can give, that you could give, or we could take from this for other people that are running organizations, is don't necessarily be the either the innovator, the early adapter, but don't be the later adapter, right? Just see that trend ahead of time and make sure that you're jumping on it ahead of time. So for you, as far as expenses go, because you're running a budget, and I know we've had this conversation before, and you're also running a personal budget at home. What has that been like for you, adjusting your organization's budget and personal budget? I mean, especially when everything is, at least for your organization, is essential. It's necessary to have the business or to have the organization run the way it does, right? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, one way to think about it is just take your travel budget, your mileage, and that becomes software, right? It is, that's the simplest way to do it, or to think about it. There is a little bit more complex math when it comes to, you have staff who you don't really have work for them right now, but you think you're gonna, or you think you will soon. It almost becomes like an involuntary paid vacation, for a few weeks. There are a number of staff who are in that situation where it's like, I need to put you on the bench right now, but I think I'm going to need you in like 2 weeks. So let's call it vacation, 2 weeks vacation, unplanned. Right. So, we've had a number of folks that we've done that with, which, the balance sheet doesn't like, but, the cost of replacing some of those individuals later is going to be much higher than, I'd rather pay the right person 2 weeks extra than lose out on them, because they need to pay their bills and went and found something else. So, this is strange. I don't want to use the R word, but people study recessions, right? And this does not look like any recession we've ever had. I can't think of a time in my lifetime or in any of the history that I've read about where any economy just was cruising along and just stopped dead cold. And that's what happened. And this is strange, and everybody's trying to figure it out. At Skookum, we were pretty well positioned going into this. We were, in as good a financial situation as we could hope to be. Every year, we do most of our fundraising in the back half of the year. Q4 is where we raise all our money. Something like 60% of our total budget we raise between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And then we kind of have one last sort of blip that is our charity poker tournament in March, and then usually a matching campaign in May or June. And those two things, sort of carry us through a very lean, dry summer, and then we get back after it in Q4. And so how it's affected us is, our lost revenue really is that sort of additional bump that we would normally feel. We're just going to miss, right? So that's what we've missed, which there's lots of public assistance available for nonprofits and businesses in all shapes and sizes at the moment to help cover with that. And, we're all, I think, wrestling with the same bureaucracy about how to unlock that support. But, just like everybody else, that's what we're doing.
Just figuring it out. Yeah. And for all of those that will be listening to this, don't try to contact Ray. I think it's October, the second week of October or November. When was it again?
Yes, Thanksgiving to New Year's. Yeah.
It's a bad time, bad time. But no, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. It's interesting that all of these things kind of fall into place for a reason, right? And do you see silver linings in what is happening? Because it's not necessarily, I agree with you, I don't think it's necessarily a recession. I think that our economy just stopped dead because of a health epidemic. So what kind of silver linings are you seeing as a result of being home and of needing to adjust these budgets and having to make do with less of a budget? And like, what does that do for us from a mindset perspective and an operating perspective?
Yeah, there have been a few things for us. I talked about our sort of pivot in parent-child visitation. We had the meeting, the all-staff meeting we had right before we'd done all the work to sort of set it up. And it was like, okay, do we need to turn this thing on or not? And, we were just reflecting on, like, why have we not always had this? Like, that is an excellent tool to have, video conference, Zoom style connection established between every child in foster care and their biological parents, over and above the court mandated in-person visitation. Like, why didn't we think about that until now? And that's going to be something we do, is set that up with every kid placed in every home that we license. I'm sure there will be exceptions. I get in trouble when I say every and always, but generally every kid in the homes that we license, we're going to set up this kind of contact. It is a very powerful indicator of future health and success for the child, is how connected they were to their biological parents while in foster care. And so, this is a tool that it just never occurred to us to use, that we're going to start using all the time, even when in-person visits are back on. A member of our staff asked the question, like, what of our systems, now that we're not using them, do we want to tear down and rebuild? What wasn't serving us well in the old world that now while it's turned off, we want to completely throw it out and rebuild it and start fresh. So there are a few of those things, so sort of housekeeping things. We're getting to our someday maybe list too,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I love that concept of someday maybe list, because we forget about it. It's very important for the big picture, but we forget about it when we're so heavy in the grind of like working in the business or in the organization. We lose sight of, like, these are some things that we need to accomplish long term. I just don't have the time because we're just operating. And wow. So there's silver linings, and this is what I'm loving most about this whole idea of pivoting, is that there are so many silver linings in what people consider to be chaos. Ray, you're a very well-informed, educated guy. Where are you getting your news? Where are you turning off your news? Because there's in my opinion, a lot of fear-mongering happening right now that I don't necessarily think is a help for us mindset, for any reason. Tell me a little bit more. Where do you get your news? Where's it coming from?
I don't read the news.
Good.
I think surprises a lot of people. I'm of the opinion that news in the world that we live in now is generally unhelpful. Journalism that gets funded by the click or by the view stops being journalism at a certain point. So I'm interested in sources that are going to sort of put the moment that we're in context of sort of the larger narrative of the human species. Like, that's the kind of thing I want to read. In Washington State, the best at it is an outfit called Crosscut. And they don't write the news. I would not describe them as the news. They are journalism in its purest form. And they're they're going to talk about, the issues that the news is sort of skimming, but they're going to go as deep as any person could imagine going. You could print out their articles and it would be, a pretty decent stack of paper. That's what I tend to read. When I want to know what's going on, in a situation like this, where I'm like, what is the rule? Like, what rule is announced today? Anymore, I go straight to the horse's mouth. I've gotten in the habit of watching Governor Inslee's press conferences live as they're happening, and if I miss them, then I read the transcript afterwards, because you're right. There is a decent amount of fear mongering going on, and it is. Most news outlets have an incentive to make it that way. They get paid when people click, they get paid when people watch. The way that they make that happen is by being more sensational than the next guy, which, that creates anxiety in all the people watching it.
And it's an addiction, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, easily.
One network I think you would really enjoy, first of all, Crosscut sounds amazing. It sounds like it's truly cutting down to the core, because I do feel like in our time we're seeing a lot of skimming and like highlighting whatever it is that makes it sensational, like you said. John Krasinski from The Office, he's doing a series called, it's like the Good News Network.
Oh, I love it.
All good news, and it's all like positive things that are happening, and it was really funny. He had the one I watched, he had Steve Carell on, and that was, to me, what we need more of. I think what you're talking about and what that is what we need more of. Two different intents, but all to the same end, right? But yeah, that's definitely what I would recommend out there too, for a little uplifting news segment as well.
It's fun. It's a fun show. I really enjoyed it, watching it too. I discovered, I imagine the same way you did. It's been all over Twitter and Facebook, but it's really enjoyable. I can't tell if Krasinski's like genuinely trying out for a late night hosting gig, post apocalypse year, or if he's just killing time and having fun.
I think maybe if both happen, it would be a win-win.
It sure would be. Yeah.
Good, but yeah. So going forward, Ray, what advice do you have for people and business owners, just your everyday people that are maybe off work right now? What do you like? What would you say for the best way to go forward, health-wise, mentally? How can we move forward as a community?
Yeah, I mean, I think humans are creatures of routine. They're creatures of habit, and our routine, our daily, commute to work, the 10 a.m. coffee break, lunch, sort of stretch and walk around the office at 3:30, drive home at 5, like that routine that we all have a version of. Provides stability and comfort and familiarity. And what this moment in time has done is just sort of ended it. Can't have it anymore. Well, we are all capable of building new routines. And I've heard people talk about it feels like every day is identical and every day is different. I don't know what's coming, but seek a routine that works for you and serves you and meets your needs and has the right mix of going outside and walking around and playing with your kids and getting work done. And, I find the world sort of become more manic. Everything's urgent and short and small. I'm sort of pinging from thing to thing to thing to thing. And, anytime you're working virtually, virtual meetings are always more frequent and shorter. And that's sort of everything's become more frequent and shorter. And so I'm trying to mix into my routine things that are long and slow. I'm not doing tempo runs. I'm doing long and slow every day, sort of resist my natural sort of the inertia I'm feeling toward that, like more frequent and shorter in everything. So, I broke out the smoker this weekend, low and slow, it's the same thing. I'm trying to, where I can, sort of resist that inertia and settle into a routine that works for me.
So this is an opportunity to take our current habits and routines, analyze them, not to get out of any habit or routine, because I'm a strong believer, and it sounds like you are too, and pretty much everybody that I've talked to through this whole pivot process has said the same thing. Don't lose sight of a schedule or a habit or doing things that keep you engaged in your daily routine, because not everyone's essential, right?
Yeah.
So what I really loved about what you just said was you're fighting, or you're resisting the requirement from your current schedule to short and quick to doing things that are kind of like longer and like kind of more like a stroll on the beach versus a quick sprint, right? So I love hearing that, and I think that's probably one of the bigger things that people need to understand going forward with all this process, is that like this is not a snow day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't lose sight of what our goals and dreams are. There's going to be massive change on the other side. I think there's going to be, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the crosscut says something different, but I believe that there's going to be pretty sizable economic opportunity on the other side, and growth for organizations like yours that maybe they didn't have those pieces before. So I think there's so much that's good that's going to happen on the other side, but it's all about how you look at it. So don't watch the news, people. Check out Crosscut. Yeah. Ray, before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to say about your current life, what's going on right now? Anything, last words?
Yeah, I mean, as a leader of an organization that is philanthropic, right? We're funded because members of the Bellingham community decide to give to support a great cause. The advice I've been giving to people is, keep supporting the things you were supporting before this started. I'm not out there trying to raise brand new support. I'm telling people, if you were going to the event, right? If you were going to go to the Handbags for Housing or Skookum's poker tournament, or the event for the mission, if you were going to go to an event that got canceled, donate anyway. If you support an organization and usually give around this time of year, keep doing it. It takes a person of gumption to maintain their commitments in the face of uncertainty. So I'm telling people, if we all just continue supporting the causes that we were supporting before this, we're going to be all right.
Agreed. So don't stop doing the things that are working and the things that are good.
You got it.
It's pretty simple. Well, Ray, thanks for joining me on the Pivot series here. Welcome back to Building Bellingham again. You're back.
Repeat guest.
But with no whiskey this time, unfortunately.
That's a disappointment. It's too early. It's too early for whiskey.
Depends if it's a snow day or not.
That's right.
Thanks for joining me.